I took on the biggest project at school, the most notorious playboy, Jackson. Everyone thought I didn't stand a chance. He skipped classes, got into fights, and I was always there copying notes for him. For 3 years, I was his biggest supporter, pouring my heart into helping him get into an elite university. But right before orientation week, he dumped me. He looked down at me with that same arrogance and said, "I know you've liked me for ages, but compared to Chloe, you've always had your nose buried in books. You're too rigid. Let's break up. I'm going to be with Chloe." Everyone was waiting for me to break down. Instead, I glanced at my bank account, saw the extra $50 million that had just landed, and with genuine sincerity said, "Okay, congratulations." No one knew that my seemingly unconditional devotion to him had always been because his mother paid me an exorbitant amount. Now that the money was in, it was time for me to go. She got dumped by the school heartthrob and only said congratulations. Didn't even last a minute before she hung up. So decisive. The gossip spread quickly. She must be absolutely losing her mind with grief, right? Doesn't look like it. Too calm. More like she was looking forward to being dumped. As the whispers hung in the air, someone cautiously glanced at Jackson. He had his arm around his new girlfriend, but his handsome face was dark, clearly annoyed. They quickly changed tactics. Everyone knows how long Eileen has been crushing on Jackson. There's no way she's genuinely indifferent. She's probably just bottling it up inside. I bet you anything she'll be back begging Jackson not to abandon her within 3 days. Jackson's scowl eased slightly. If she comes back begging, I might consider forgiving her. Let's see what she does. I was blissfully unaware of their chatter as I dragged my suitcase toward the train station. Even if I had heard their mockery, I would have just offered a faint, cold smile. If it weren't for my parents' unwavering belief that a daughter was useless for studying and should be married off for money while she was young. If it weren't for my acceptance letter being shredded into worthless scraps. If it weren't for my alcoholic father beating me until I was battered and barely conscious. That was when Mrs. Sterling, Jackson's mother, found me and offered me a deal. If I could help Jackson get into an elite university, she would not only cover my high school tuition but also give me $50 million. Otherwise, I would never have chased after Jackson, the school's resident bad boy. Always at his beck and call, always his devoted shadow, enduring everything without complaint. For 3 whole years, I used every trick in the book, turning him from a rebellious slacker into a top student, successfully getting him admitted to an elite university. Now my mission was complete. I had the money, and I could finally leave. Why would I be sad because he had a new girlfriend? From the very beginning, all I wanted was to break free from hell and carve out a world of my own. Love was never on my radar. After orientation week, I didn't enroll in the university I was accepted to. My parents wouldn't let me go. A prestigious university student could command a decent amount of money, and they wanted to keep that control. If I was going to leave, I had to leave completely. Over the 3-month summer, I worked tirelessly and reached B2 level in French. I successfully processed my study abroad application. As I boarded my flight to Paris, Jackson's texts started coming in. "Why did you block all my contacts, Eileen? Haven't you thrown enough tantrums this whole summer? Even if Chloe and I are together, we're still friends. Stop acting out. Unblock me." His words still dripped with that usual arrogant tone, as if he was certain I'd be just like the past 3 years. No matter how much he trampled on me, I would always come crawling back. I simply took out my SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into the airport trash can. Along with that card, I discarded all the humiliation, the calculations, and the unbearable memories of the past. The plane sliced through the sky, erasing my prior existence. Later, my best friend told me Jackson had been leaving comments under my old social media posts. The messages were always something like, "Are you done acting up yet? It's just a relationship. Why are you so mad? Add me back already." She said, "First Jackson was convinced you'd come back. But when you didn't, he started getting really aggressive. Sometimes just hearing your name would make his face darken." It felt like I was listening to someone else's story. It didn't stir a single ripple in me. I used the $50 million from Mrs. Sterling to start fresh in Paris. I chose a top design academy. The language, the culture, the heavy workload, everything was a new challenge. But there was no Jackson to appease, no suffocating family. Just my sketchpad, my designs, and boundless possibilities for the future. Years vanished in a blink. Nurtured by hard work and talent, my jewelry designs began making waves at major fashion weeks, winning several prestigious international awards. As Lumina Company's newly appointed chief designer, I was dispatched back to my home country to spearhead expansion into the Asia-Pacific market. On my first day back, while grabbing lunch at the restaurant beneath the branch office, a hesitant voice spoke behind me. "Eileen? Is that really you?" I turned to see a somewhat familiar face. It was Ashley, I think, a girl who used to sit in front of me in high school. Her eyes widened as she openly scrutinized me from head to toe, astonished. Oh my God, it really is you. You've changed so much. Gone was the timidity and the desperate need to please from high school. Time and experience had granted me a calm, composed demeanor. Long time no see. Ashley lit up. What a coincidence. There's a class reunion tonight right upstairs at the Summit restaurant. Loads of people are coming, and Jackson will be there too. You absolutely have to come. Everyone will be shocked when they see you. Jackson. That name was like a distant echo, one that hadn't crossed my mind in years. I was about to decline, but then I reconsidered. Some things didn't need to be avoided. Okay. The entire day was spent dealing with company handover tasks, keeping me swamped with work. By the time I remembered the reunion, it was already late. Too lazy to return to the hotel to change, I just wore my casual clothes and headed up to the private room at the Summit. Pushing open the heavy door, a wave of noisy chatter washed over me. The private room was huge, with a giant round table packed with people. My gaze swept the room and instantly landed on the man at the head of the table, clearly the center of attention. Jackson. He was more mature now, his handsome features sharper. Dressed in an expensive casual suit, he exuded that same relaxed aura, always a focal point of any crowd. Right beside him sat a young, pretty girl, her makeup flawless, her clothes flashy. But it wasn't Chloe. After a brief silence, a drunken classmate was the first to recognize me. Holy crap. Look, Jackson, your simp Eileen is here. That shout detonated the entire room. Everyone's eyes swung to me, filled with surprise, mockery, and glee. Jackson's head snapped up. When he saw me standing in the doorway, his pupils contracted sharply. His easygoing expression instantly froze, replaced by shock and something unreadable. The girl beside him immediately sensed his discomfort, tightening her grip on his arm and glaring at me with hostility. Eileen. I ignored the whispers and stares, walking straight to the empty seat beside Ashley. Calmly, I poured myself a glass of water. Eileen, long time no see. Brittany, dressed to the nines as usual, was the first to speak. Heard you didn't go to college back then. Well, yeah, how could your family afford it? So where did you end up working these past few years? Please don't tell me it's like what everyone said, that you married some old guy. Your outfit today is pretty casual though. She emphasized married some old guy, making a few girls giggle behind their hands. I've been living abroad for a few years, I replied faintly, unwilling to elaborate. Oh, abroad? Another guy chimed in, his tone dripping with exaggerated sympathy. Returning from overseas isn't as easy as it sounds. You can do some shady jobs abroad, but those are illegal here. We're old classmates, so have you found a job yet? Want us to help you out? My uncle's company needs an admin assistant. The pay isn't great, but hey, it's legitimate. Exactly, Brittany jumped in, feigning sincerity. Even though foreign men like Asian women, they usually just play around. Eileen, we're old classmates, so speak up if you're in trouble. I mean, you didn't go to college and you don't have many nice clothes, so interviews must be tough. Maybe I can take you shopping sometime for something decent. If you're short on cash, I can lend you some. You used to be such a genius, it's a shame to see you like this. Jackson remained silent, but the fingers gripping his wine glass tightened slightly. His eyes never left me. His new girlfriend, Tiffany, finally couldn't hold back. She sneered, leaning forward with a look of condescending pity. Eileen, right? I heard you were desperate for my Jackson, chasing him, helping with homework, even dealing with his teachers. You really worked hard, huh? But at least you had some self-awareness. You knew you and Jackson were worlds apart and had no future. So you ran off? Though honestly, it doesn't look like you've done very well for yourself. She paused, then smiled sweetly. Jackson is the heir to Sterling Industries, and me, I just took over my family's fashion brand. I'm negotiating collaborations with top international design companies. If you're struggling, we can help you out. I calmly drank my water. No need, thank you. Tiffany scoffed, her tone now triumphant. You probably don't know how much influence I have. You know Lumina, the rising French luxury jewelry brand? Their chief designer is a genius who won international awards in Paris. They're incredibly talented and very mysterious. I pulled a lot of strings to finally get in touch. If she designs a collaborative collection for my brand, it'll shake up the fashion world. With a snap of my fingers, I could probably even find you a job. Everyone gasped in awe, flattering her. Lumina, I know them. Their designs are so tasteful. I heard that designer is a genius, impeccable style. Most brands can't even get her attention. Ms. Tiffany's network is amazing. Only someone like her deserves to stand beside Jackson. Tiffany lifted her chin proudly. This was exactly the effect she wanted. What's the designer's name? So powerful, someone asked. Her English name is Eileen Sue, Tiffany replied smugly. She's from here. Very young, but incredibly talented. It's not easy for a small brand like ours to get her on board, but I'm confident. She leaned into Jackson. Jackson, don't you think so? Jackson barely responded. His gaze was still fixed on me, his eyes dark with silent resentment. The others continued putting me down, using Tiffany to elevate themselves. I simply picked up my glass of water, took a sip, and remained utterly calm. Just then, a gentle knock sounded on the private room door. The gentle knock came again, a polite tap-tap that somehow sliced through the buzz of gossip and clinking glasses. The door opened. A man in a tailored black vest stepped in, eyes sweeping the table until they found me. He inclined his head with professional warmth. Pardon the interruption. Miss Sue, your party has arrived. Mr. Laurent and Mr. Joe are waiting upstairs. The private salon is ready. The room didn't fall silent, it plummeted. I set my water down. Thank you. I'll be up in a moment. He nodded and withdrew. The door clicked shut like a stamp on the letter. M's. Sue? Someone repeated, dazed. Tiffany's painted smile faltered, then rallied. That's a coincidence, she said with brittle cheer. The designer I mentioned is also named. Eileen Sue, Ashley blurted, swiveling toward me, eyes lit with something between delight and vindication. You're Eileen Sue. I didn't confirm. I didn't have to. The recognition passed through the room as if someone had flipped on a row of lights. Mouths parted. Dull eyes sharpened. Even the ice floating in the crystal pitchers seemed to crack with a small, urgent sound. Brittany forced a laugh that shriveled at the edges. Come on. It's not that Eileen Sue, obviously. Tiffany leaned back, fingers tightening around Jackson's forearm. Right, she said, too fast. Because the Eileen Sue I'm negotiating with flies between Paris and New York every week and is notoriously private. She wouldn't, her gaze cut me, scanned my plain blouse, the hair I'd twisted into a lazy knot because time had run thin, the scuff card holder I'd tossed on the table beside my phone. She wouldn't show up to a class reunion in that. Jackson's eyes never left my face. They were the same eyes I had watched cloud and clear over the years I kept his grades above water, the same eyes that had narrowed with arrogant certainty when he dumped me on the phone like he was canceling a subscription. Now they watched me as if he had just misread a crucial line and the test paper had been taken away. Why didn't you say anything? His voice came out rough. Say what? I asked. That you, he faltered, then regrouped. That you went abroad. That you did. This. He sounded as if he wanted credit. As if the universe owed him a memo when a planet changed its orbit. Someone at the far end tried to restart the script. Eileen, if you need a job, my uncle. Ashley's elbow found ribs. Shut up. Tiffany lifted her chin. Even if you are namesake to the person I mentioned, it doesn't mean you're the same one. You're right, I said, rising and smoothing my sleeves. It doesn't. A hum started in my pocket, one short buzz. I glanced at the screen. Marc Laurent arrived. Don't let them keep you. We have 10 minutes before the investors. I have a meeting upstairs, I told the room. Enjoy your reunion. I reached for the door. A chair scraped hard. Eileen. Jackson's voice again, closer now. Wait. I stopped, hand on the handle, and looked back. For a heartbeat the old room reassembled itself, chalk dust, late afternoons with sunlight and spears across desks, his lazy grin when I handed him notes I had recopied in neat, square handwriting. My muscles remembered the ache of hunger I used to fold into myself so my parents wouldn't notice I'd skipped dinner to tutor someone else's son. Then it all dissolved. What is it? I asked. About that summer, he said, trying for a softer register. You blocked me. You disappeared. I left, I said. With my mother's money, Tiffany added, acid pooling beneath her words. I turned my head to her slowly. With my compensation. Jackson flinched. Eileen. You made a deal with my mother? Tiffany cut in, incredulous, angling toward Jackson. Behind my back? His jaw jumped. This was years ago. And still the only competent decision in the Sterling household, someone muttered, not quietly enough. Laughter skittered around the table, nervous, disbelieving, hungry. I opened the door. Have a good evening? The corridor outside smelled faintly of cedar and polished stone. A waiter passed with a tray crowned by a silver dome. I walked past the velvet rope, up one flight of stairs, and into a different weather system, cool air, carpet that swallowed footsteps, wall sconces that transformed light into amber. An attendant guided me through a narrow hall paneled with walnut until a door whispered open on the private salon. Miss Sue, Mark said, standing. He was 40, maybe 42, with Roman nose and quiet hands that belonged to a violinist or a surgeon. Next to him, Leonard Joe, Lumina's Asia-Pacific director, rose as well, smile quick, eyes sharp. Sorry to keep you waiting, I said. Worth the wait, Leonard replied, then glanced at the folio tucked beneath my arm. You brought the revisions? I set the folio on the marble table and slid out the sketches. The salon had been staged like a small gallery, slate walls, 3 pedestals with glass cases holding our prototype cuffs, a bottle of water sweating elegantly beside clean tumblers. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the city was a field of digital stars. Mark waved the attendant away and we sat. We have 10 minutes before the investors arrive, he said. And, incidentally, before Sterling Industries walks into the ballroom next door with every fashion buyer in their wake. Sterling? I repeated, blinking once. Here? Leonard's smile tilted. Their quarterly investor dinner. The market skittish about their retail pivot. They're courting reassurance. Convenient, I murmured. Mark leaned forward. We have final numbers from Paris. The Aurora line outperformed the projections by 16% in pre-orders, and the Vogue spread drops next week. Tiffany Sterling has been persistent in asking for a collaboration to rescue her brand from looking like a copy of a copy. I told her we'd consider if she could satisfy certain conditions. She thinks those conditions are price and exclusivity. They're not, Leonard added. They're ethics and control. I flipped a page. The bracelet sketched their look simple until you saw how the light would get caged inside the lattice, how the stones could dissolve into architecture. And supply chain transparency, I said. And in-house artisans paid market-leading wages. And no campaign that treats women as ornaments for ornaments. Leonard's eyes warmed. Exactly. Mark looked like a man watching the tide align with the moon. They will push back. They think a logo is a soul. They think proximity is originality. A faint knock sounded at the salon door. The attendant reappeared. Mr. Laurent, Mr. Joe, the investors have arrived in the adjoining room. Ms. Sterling has also sent word that she would like 5 minutes with Ms. Sue before the presentations. Mark's mouth tightened. Of course she has. Leonard checked his watch. We can give her 3. 2, Mark said. We stood. The corridor was busier now, servers ferrying bottles, a clutch of people in sleek suits moving like a school of fish. In the curve of the hall, just before the ballroom doors, Tiffany waited with a posture like sharpened glass. Jackson stood half a step behind her, hands in pockets, the picture of casual authority someone had painted for him. Seeing them here in this light, Tiffany glowing with entitlement, Jackson handsomer than I remembered but somehow diminished, felt like walking into a scene I had already resolved in my head and finding the lines different but the ending intact. Ms. Sue, Tiffany said, crisp as an envelope being torn open along its seam. At last. Ms. Sterling, I replied. Her gaze flicked to Mark and Leonard as if they were ornamental frames around a canvas she paid for. I asked for 5 minutes. And we have 2, Mark said, voice gentle but irrefutable. She ignored him, pivoting to me. I'll be direct. My brand has 3 flagships, 11 boutiques, and a digital presence in 9 countries. We have the capital to scale any collaboration you design. I want exclusivity for 12 months and I'll pay your usual premium plus 20%. In exchange, your name goes on every window with mine. She smiled as if revealing a secret she'd rehearsed. We'll make history, Miss Sue. History, I said softly, is not always flattering. Leonard coughed into his fist to hide a laugh. Tiffany's eyes hardened. If this is about the rumors, about me being some plaything in Jackson's life, let me assure you I'm the one making choices. Good for you, I said. My concerns are more prosaic. Then name them. Fair wages, I said. Clean stones. No unpaid overtime off the books. No subcontracts to workshops that lock 15-year-olds into 12-hour shifts. Real training programs for girls who age out of shelters. And creative control in the final cut, including the right to pull out if marketing turns women into props. For a second she simply stared at me. Then her lip curled. Are you doing charity or business? Both, I said. Profit is cleaner when it doesn't smell like smoke. Color rose in her cheeks. She glanced at Jackson as if to say do something, then remembered she was the one who needed me, and pivoted back. Those are lofty demands. My father will say you're naive. Your father sells dresses that cost 2 months of the average salary, I said evenly. He can afford decency. Something flickered in Jackson's face, shame, maybe, or memory. When he spoke, his voice was low. I mean, that summer. My mother. She paid me, I said. I accepted. We both got what we wanted. She wanted a son at an elite university, he said, stepping closer. I didn't know you left the country. That you didn't need to know, I said. We broke up. His jaw clenched. He stopped, as if the word mistake got stuck in his throat. Tiffany's laugh chimed sharp. This is sweet, but I don't have time for high school reminiscence. Ms. Sue, I'll agree to clean stones and a wage audit. But creative control remains with my team. We have a brand voice. So do I said. Mark checked the time. We need to move. Tiffany's hand flashed up, the diamond on her finger a small, cold star. Fine. We'll sign a memorandum next week. You'll get your charity clauses. But if the line fails, your name takes the fall. No, I said. If the line fails because ethics inflated costs, I'll accept the noise. If it fails because your team cheapens the work, I won't. That's what creative control means. Then no deal, she snapped. Then no deal, I echoed. The ballroom doors opened and lights spilled like champagne. Heads turned. The Sterling logo pulsed on a massive LED wall inside, looping through a montage of smiling models, glittering showrooms, boardroom applause. A host in a tuxedo beckoned Tiffany with a discreet gesture. Miss Sterling, he murmured, we're ready for your segment. She smoothed her skirt, threw me a look that promised winter, and sailed in on a tide of expectation. Jackson lingered, hands still in pockets. She'll come around, he said softly. When she realizes you're not bluffing. I don't bluff, I said. A muscle jumped in his cheek. About Paris. Don't. I kept my voice gentle. Whatever you're about to say will only serve you. He swallowed. For a beat, nostalgia placed a ghost hand over the past, a faint warmth of all the afternoons I believed in him because someone had to. Then it withdrew. We'll talk later, he said, almost to himself, and walked into the light after Tiffany. Mark exhaled. Well. Leonard grinned. That went. Perfectly. We don't have a collaboration, Mark pointed out. We have our spine, Leonard countered. We moved with the attendance current to the investor salon, the quieter counterpart to the ballroom. Inside, 9 people waited, 2 women in impeccable suits, a man with a beard that said captains and vintage maps, 3 from a fund I recognized from their hard questions and rumors, and the rest discreetly powerful. On one wall, an easel held a clean whiteboard. On the opposite wall, our prototypes held their own silent conversation in glass. Mark introduced us, kept it short, then gestured to me. You'll want to hear from Ms. Sue. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't rehearse my smile. I set my folio down, opened it to the cross-section that showed why the Aurora lattice could be polished to a mirror without losing its tensile strength, and began. We spoke for 20 minutes. They asked about margins and margins again, logistics through ports that had recently snarled with strikes, about the probability that the new campaign would alienate old clients and whether the game justified the gamble. I answered the way I designed, line by line, clean joins, everything doing at least 2 jobs. When I lifted the prototype cup from its bed and tilted it toward the lights, the room shifted forward the way people do despite themselves when something catches. Mark closed with 3 sentences. Leonard closed with 1. When the salon emptied, applause had not broken out and confetti had not fallen, but the ground under our feet felt as if it had found a truer level. Mark's phone purred. He checked it and smiled with only his eyes. Vogue moved up the online feature. Tonight, not next week. Good, Leonard said. Let them argue in our comments section while we sleep. We stepped back into the corridor. Across the hall, the ballroom audience was clapping on cue. A voice boomed from the sound system, sleek, buoyant, disembodied. Tiffany stood at the stage's edge, a figure carved of light and ambition, talking about legacy and innovation in sentences that could be shuffled and still make the same promise. I was about to turn away when the LED wall behind her changed. New footage, a new montage. A swirl of jewelry, then a still. A bracelet that looked like dawn taking a breath. The caption, collaboration pending, Sterling X Lumina. Mark's face didn't move. Leonard's head tilted. Tiffany smiled like a woman unveiling a masterpiece. We are in the final stages of signing with Lumina's legendary chief designer, Ms. Eileen Sue, she announced, voice carrying like a silk ribbon. Together, we'll. My phone lit my palm. 2 messages arrived nearly on top of each other. Mark, we did not authorize this. Paris PR, statement. They used your name without contract. Your call, soft denial or ice cold? The ballroom applauded again, louder. Tiffany basked in it. Jackson, off to the side, looked at me across the gulf of audience and light, his expression abruptly unreadable. I thought of the years my name had been a convenience for other people's plans. The notes I'd written and signed for teachers who never looked past the handwriting. The summers I'd turned into parachutes for a boy who never learned to land on his own. The child I had been, who had believed silence was the safest place to live. Give me 2 minutes, I told Mark. His mouth twitched. 1. I stepped to the side of the corridor where no one brushed against me and typed. To VR, Mark, Leonard. Release the following in 5 minutes. Lumina confirms that Ms. Sue has not signed any collaboration agreement with the Sterling brand. Lumina is committed to partnerships that meet the highest standards of ethical sourcing, artisan compensation, and creative autonomy. Announcements that suggest otherwise are premature and unauthorized. A breath later, I added. We wish the Sterling brand success in their pursuit of excellence. When they are ready to meet Lumina's standards, our door will be open. I hit send. The statement went out like a ripple cutting cross-current against a wake. It would take a minute to hit phones, 2 to hit the ballroom, 5 to swirl into the chatter above the city. I slid my phone back into my pocket. Sharp, Leonard murmured. Measured, Mark corrected, but his eyes were pleased. We drifted with the crowd until we reached the landing that overlooked and slightly behind the ballroom. From here, the stage looked like a model set and the faces below like coins. I let myself look, just for a second, at a life I might have been slotted into if I'd stayed, the green room smirks, the borrowed gloss, the applause on demand. Then I let the picture go. Ashley appeared at my elbow as if conjured, breathless, eyes huge. I hunted you through 3 wrong rooms, she whispered. Eileen, it's all over the group chat. People are saying. I know, I said. She squeezed my arm, giddy, a little fierce. Brittany's pretending she always knew. Someone spilled red wine on her white dress. It's the best thing I've seen all year. A laugh escaped me, small and real. You didn't have to follow. Please. I'm upgrading from spectatorship to front row. She leaned closer. Are you really not going to work with Tiffany? Not like this. Down below, a man in a midnight suit crossed the stage. He murmured in Tiffany's ear. I watched the shallow smile pull, falter, tug itself back into place. Across the room, Jackson lifted his phone and looked at something he had not expected to see. Ashley followed my gaze. He looks like someone took away his favorite mirror. What happens now? She asked. Now, I said, we go home. We sleep. We wake up and work. And Jackson? He wakes up too, I said. That's his problem. Mark touched my shoulder lightly. You were excellent. I only did what we said we'd do. That's rarer than it should be, he said. Leonard's phone buzzed. He scanned, then whistled softly. Vogue just embedded our statement in their breaking banner. Let them, Mark said. We don't need to wrestle rumor. We just need to build. Exactly, I said. We left the landing and threaded through the backstage hall where the muffled bass of applause trembled the drywall. In the service elevator, an attendant held the door, eyes politely lowered. When it closed, Ashley sagged against the mirror and whooped, silent, delighted. I smiled at our reflections, the 3 of us and one bright-eyed hurricane of a friend, and for the first time that night, fatigue washed through me all at once. Not the old kind that had a bruise hidden inside, but the new kind that came after a long day of work that belonged to me. The car led us out into a night that smelled like rain flirting with the city's heat. The summit's portico funneled a parade of dignitaries towards sleek vehicles and cameras that turned yawns into glamour. Our driver eased up in a sedan that looked deliberately ordinary. As we pulled from the curb, someone stepped off the sidewalk and put a palm to the passenger window. Ashley startled. I didn't. I'd recognized the stride before the face. Jackson. He bent, peering in past the reflection. The driver paused, looked to me for instruction. I lowered the glass 2 inches. Eileen, Jackson said. The city noise made it intimate. Don't let her use your name like that. I'll make sure they retract on stage. You don't control her, I said without heat. His mouth twisted. No. But I can try. You should have tried a long time ago. Something in his expression cracked, a hairline fracture that turned light into a prism. Back then, he said hoarsely, I thought you'd always be there. I said nothing. Dinner? He tried, sudden, desperate. Tomorrow. Just to talk. No. He flinched. You can't even. Jackson, I said, finally letting his name take shape. You were a job. Then you were a lesson. Neither qualifies you for the rest of my life. He stared at me. He was handsome in the way that made people forgive too much. He had been forgiven by a boy, by a school, by a mother who hired help to make sure forgiveness took root. For a moment I felt something like mercy, but it wasn't for him. It was for the girl who had believed he was the only door marked exit. Congratulations, I added softly. He blinked. For what? For finally hearing the word no. I raised the window. The driver glanced at me once in the rear view. I nodded. We pulled into the current of headlights, and Jackson fell away like a page slipping out of a book that had been rebound without him. Ashley exhaled a sound that was half sigh, half battle cry. I love you, she said to no one in particular. I love women. Leonard laughed. Mark watched the city and said nothing, but his silence felt like a benediction. My phone glowed again. A flood of notifications scrolled, PR confirmations, a message from our Paris atelier where it was almost dawn, 3 offers from department stores that had ignored us last quarter now asking for meetings, and one number I didn't recognize that had filled my voicemail with empty breaths. I switched the device to Do Not Disturb and let it face down on my knee. Outside, the night flowed. Somewhere, rain finally made up its mind and threaded itself into the air. By the time we reached my hotel, the lobby was a small garden of sound, heels, a fountain, discreet check-ins. Mark squeezed my shoulder. Get some sleep. 8:30, we debrief. 8, Leonard said. She's an early riser. Mark grimaced like a man who would love his coffee more in the morning. 8, then. They left me at the elevator. Ashley tucked herself under my arm for a hard, brief hug. Text me if you need me to bully anyone online, she said solemnly. I will, I said. In my room, I kicked off my flats, stood for a moment in the soft dark, and let the city's distant pulse lap at the windows. I could still see the LED wall blooming with someone else's version of my name. Anger didn't rise. The shape inside my chest was not rage but resolve, the clean click of a lock set to the key it had always been cut for. I showered with the water just shy of too hot, braided my damp hair, and slipped between cool sheets. Sleep came fast, like a reward. It didn't last. I woke once, after an hour, to the rumble of thunder that had finally caught up with the forecast. Rain was flinging itself at the glass like a new idea. I turned, burrowed, and dreamed nothing I could keep. Morning arrived as a color, not a sound, the particular gray of a city wringing itself dry. I made tea, opened my laptop, and watched the aftershocks of the statement play out across feeds. Some called me sanctimonious. Some called me brave. Some said ethics were just a luxury purchase with a halo, and some said halos were what you wore when you stopped needing applause. Between the noise were the messages that mattered, an email from a shelter director I'd met in Paris, writing in halting English to ask whether we could pilot the workshop program here, a note from a small studio of stonecutters in Jaipur that had gone fair trade last year, attaching invoices and hope, a text from a girl at my old high school who said she'd seen my name on the news and was going to apply to a scholarship with her own name, not the boys she used to write in the margins. At 8 o'clock on the dot, my door clicked. Leonard stood there with 2 coffees and an expression that meant I should brace for either triumph or fire. Both, he said when I asked. We debriefed on the small sofa, knees knocking against a glass table that still smelled faintly of lemon polish. Mark joined on a call, the kind where 3 continents made a clock look like fiction. The Sterling camp has gone quiet, Mark said. Which means they're deciding whether to double down or apologize without the word sorry. They'll double, Leonard said. But their buyers will call us at lunch. I nodded. We hold. We hold, Mark agreed. By the way, Mrs. Sterling called my personal line at 6 a.m. My fingers stilled on the keyboard. What did she say? That she would like a meeting with you. Alone. A pause. She apologized. Without the word sorry, but in every other way. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. They belonged to the person who had made choices and learned the price of each. She can have 30 minutes, I said. At our office. With the door open. Leonard grinned. I'll make sure the door sticks. When I left for Lumina's temporary headquarters, the rain had turned mist. Traffic moved like a held breath. The building's lobby smelled of coffee and new carpet, and my team was already there, Anna with her eternal pencil behind her ear, Jasper in a shirt that matched nothing, and May, who didn't look up from her screen because she never needed to in order to know when I walked in. Morning, boss, May said, and then, after a beat, war or parade? Both, I said, and the room smiled the way rooms do when they decide what kind of day they're going to build. We were 15 minutes into the schedule when the receptionist pinged up. Miss Sue, Mrs. Sterling has arrived. For a heartbeat, the room was that hallway again in my high school, same light, same taste of something metallic, same sense that a choice could shrink or expand a life. I stood. Open door? Leonard said from the glass wall, eyebrows a question. Open door, I confirmed. When Mrs. Sterling walked in, she looked smaller than she had in my memory, and more human. All those years ago, she had found a girl bleeding in body and ambition and offered a bargain that had felt like breath. Now she offered me a look that contained recognition and a low, careful respect. Eileen, she said, and the name in her mouth sounded different than it ever had. May I? I gestured to the chair across from me, the glass door standing as quiet witness. She sat, folded gloved hands in her lap, and lifted her chin. I won't pretend it was elegance to announce what wasn't ours to announce, she said. It was fear dressed as momentum. I called to say we will retract. Publicly. Good, I said. And I came to say, she paused. The word sorry pressed against her lips and dissolved into something older. I underestimated you. You didn't know me, I said. I don't think I wanted to, she replied softly. Not beyond what I needed. Honesty with edges. I could respect that. Her gaze moved past me to the wall-mounted board where May had stuck a cluster of yellow notes under the heading Workshop Pilot. The conditions you gave Tiffany, she said. They were never charity. They were terms of a future I should have insisted on for my own daughter. Tiffany is capable of insisting for herself, I said. She just prefers speed to structure. Mrs. Sterling was quiet for a long breath. I hope she learns. Before the market teaches her in a language that keeps receipts. She turned back to me. For what it's worth, I chose you for my son because you did not ask me to choose you. I chose the work, I said. And then you chose yourself. She stood, the conversation moving toward its natural end. We'll issue the retraction before noon. And Eileen, if there ever comes a day you would like to use our platform to amplify your program, call me directly. I nodded. If your platform meets the terms, I will. A ghost of a smile. I hope it will. She glanced at the open door, at Leonard's deliberately not listening posture, and added, almost as an afterthought, he was never good enough for you. The door eased shut behind her. May blew out a breath she'd been saving. Did a Sterling just compliment our wages spreadsheet? Mark the day, Anna murmured. Leonard tapped the glass with a knuckle, eyebrows high. Chapter 3's going to be lively. I looked at the board, at the list that weren't lines of fate but lines of tasks, and felt the old cliff inside me fill in with ground. Down the hall, a kettle clicked off. The city shook off the last of its rain and brightened by a degree no forecast had predicted. My phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number, not the one with the empty breaths. I opened it. Unknown, I owe you an apology. Not for hiring you. For not seeing you. M.S. I typed back one line. Me, thank you for retracting. The rest isn't necessary. I set the phone face down again and reached for the next sketch. Outside, the morning gathered itself. Inside, the knock that would start the next part of my life had not yet sounded. But I could hear footsteps in the hall. The retraction hits before noon. Sterling's official channels post a neat rectangle with perfect kerning. An earlier announcement referenced a potential collaboration that has not been finalized. We regret the miscommunication. The comments churn. Screenshots of our statement nest beneath it like bones. But the best part isn't their post. It's the email from our workshop partner, the shelter director who, yesterday, signed our MO in a tiny office where the paint peeled only where hope stuck longest. We can start Monday, she writes. 12 women in the first cohort. We have borrowed benches and old lamps. Can your team help with safety training? I forwarded to May with a single word, yes. By mid-afternoon we've cleared a corner of the studio and turned it into a classroom. Jasper arrives with armfuls of vices and magnifiers, Anna chalks out a schedule so clean it sings, and I open the cabinet where we keep stones and set aside a tray of small, flawed gems, chips and cloudy slivers most brands would bin. In the right settings, they will be poems. Ashley sits on a rolling stool and watches with her chin propped in her hands, grinning like a child in a candy store. I have never been so proud to be a nosy classmate, she says. Stay nosy, I tell her. Just also stay behind the safety line. She salutes. News travels fast in a city built on stories. By evening, bloggers have speculated themselves hoarse, buyers have quietly moved meetings onto our calendar, and Sterling stock has jogged down 2 points before wobbling back up on the strength of their LED wall and memory. Somewhere inside their tower of glass and certainty, a meeting is being held where everyone pretends the ending is still theirs to write. I go home early and sleep as if I've been granted a loan of peace that I can repay with work. Monday, the workshop smells like flux and fear at first. 12 women sit at tables that wobbled just a little, back straight with the kind of effort that means they learned to be invisible and are now remembering how to want. I introduce myself. I do not say I was you. I do not need to. My hands say it for me when I show them how to balance a ring in the clamp, how to keep breath steady, how to pretend the flame is a dialect you once spoke at home and can speak again if you stop apologizing to it. We mark off goals on a whiteboard: safety, soldering, finishing, setting. On the far right, under a heading that will look like decoration until it isn't, I write pricing your own work. A girl with hair cut ragged short raises her hand. Why that? She asks. We don't work for ourselves. Not yet, I say. But I never want you to flinch when someone asks your price. You'll say it like it's your name. They practice saying numbers aloud until the floor knows them. By lunch, the room smells like metal and the smallest kind of victory. At 3 o'clock, the receptionist pings up to my office. Miss Sue? There's a Mr. Hollowell asking to see you. It takes me a second to translate the slickness of the name. Jackson. Of course he would bring a suit to the lobby of my work, as if we're all still living inside his mother's calendar. Tell him I'm in a class, I say. Offer him tea. I go back to the workbench. 15 minutes later, the receptionist pings again. He says he'll wait. He can wait, I say. He waits. At 5, my cohort files out with little bags of practice pieces and 3 new calluses each. Ashley drifts in with a camera around her neck and photos that make the afternoon look like the beginning of a book you won't want to end. I wash my hands. Then I walk to the lobby. Jackson stands when he sees me. He's dressed in I am my circumstances, the kind of suit that turns fabric into apology and power into posture. Eileen, he says carefully, like the name might bite. Thank you for seeing me. I didn't, I say. I saw my students. You waited anyway. He swallows. I deserve that. I let the silence do the arithmetic. He tries again. I wanted to say, what Tiffany did on that stage, using your name, it wasn't right. I know. We're issuing a proper apology tomorrow, he says quickly. By name. Good. And there's more. His eyes search mine for a door that used to be there. We're building out an ethical sourcing program. It will be real. Third-party audits, living wage standards, no shadow shifts. We'll fund your workshop cohort stipends for a year. No branding. He clears his throat. I want to start paying back what my family took, without even knowing the names of the hands we took it from. It's a neat pitch. For once, he doesn't sound like a boy trying to skip the hard part with charm. He sounds like a man who got a glimpse of the invoice for a life and found his name on the line he never paid. Do it, I say. Send the money through the shelter, not to us. Put the audits online. Let your buyers see the factories. If you fake even one photo, I will cut you off at the knees in every room I enter. And Jackson. He meets my gaze like he's bracing for weather. Whether you do this or not, I say, it won't change who I had to become when you didn't show up. It won't undo anything. I know, he says, and for once I think he does. We stand there, the lobby a polite hum around us, while something that used to pull on me loosens its last knot and falls away without sound. He takes a breath. Eileen, Don't, I say gently. You will be tempted to name what you think you feel. This is not that story. A hollow opens in his expression and is filled, slowly, with comprehension. He nods. You're right. Good evening, Jackson. Good evening, Eileen. He turns and leaves without looking back. I watch him step into the night that always seemed to belong to him and realize it never did. It belongs to anyone who can stand inside it without asking permission. By Thursday, Sterling's apology lands with more weight. It uses the word sorry. It names me. It signs with 3 names, including Mrs. Sterling's. PR thinks it's unprecedented. I think it's basic decency that took the scenic route. We don't answer with fireworks. We answer with transparency. May pushes a live page to our site, Ethics and Proof. It isn't glossy. It's receipts, contracts with dates, wage bands with numbers, workshop photos with eyes and eyebrows and hands in them. People don't fall in love with spreadsheets, but sometimes they trust you because you showed them where you keep the broom. Friday, Vogue publishes the feature they moved up after our statement. The photos are beautiful, but the line that travels the fastest is the one where I say, without adornment, people think I built a brand out of revenge. I didn't. I built a life out of work. Ashley texts me a screenshot with 15 exclamation points and a sticker of a cartoon woman dumping a garbage bag labeled male tears into a recycling bin. I laugh aloud at my desk and scare Jasper, who drops an entire tray of watchbacks like coins. Boss, he moans. Your joy is expensive. Practice, I tell him, and spend 10 minutes on my knees helping him find every last silver circle because if the work isn't in your hands, your words are rented. The first big show is set for late spring. We decide not to chase Fashion Week's main runway. We build our own stage. We book a theater with velvet seats and good bone structure, the kind of place where light loves faces and mistakes look human instead of fatal. Our set designer scaffolds a city of metal and glass that can turn from dawn to dusk with one cue. Our models are professionals, but down the runway, in 3 looks, walk 3 of our trainees, shoulders square beneath weight not of fabric but of history. On the dress rehearsal afternoon, a delivery arrives, 5 boxes, anonymous brown, without a florist's signature. The card on top is a line in a plain hand, for the ones who thought their names would only ever be spoken by someone else. Inside, instead of flowers, sit safety glasses, 30 pairs, good ones, with adjustable nose bridges and bands. Spendy, Jasper whistles, like a pigeon that learned to read an invoice. Anonymous? May asks, brow rising. Anonymous, the runner confirms. I don't need a signature to take a hint. It feels like Mrs. Sterling. Or maybe Jackson. Or maybe one of 1,000 hands we haven't met yet, who wanted to be part of the beginning without taking it. The night before the show, it rains. The kind of soft rain that decides to stay and see how you turned out. I go early to the theater just to walk the aisle with no one in it, to let my shoes learn the creak of the floorboard so I won't be surprised by it when it matters. Mark finds me there, hands in his pockets, the particular quiet around him that people learn when their words cost money they intend to spend wisely. Stage looks good, he says. It does. He stands beside me and tips his head toward the ceiling like he can see the light grid through it. How are you? Ready, I say. Then, because I want the truth in the room to match the truth in me, terrified. In exactly the right proportions. He smiles with his eyes, the way he always does when someone tells the truth in a sentence that costs something to say. Good. I brought you something? He holds out a small box. Not jewelry. Inside, a brass tool, old, well-loved, the kind of pusher my grandfather would have used if I'd ever had one who didn't believe girls were born already finished. It was my mother's, he says. Watchmaker. She would have liked you. I turn the tool in my palm, feel the weight settle like it's been waiting for the heat of my hand. I'll take care of it. I know. We stand there for a while longer. Maybe in another kind of book, this is where he would reach for my hand and I'd let him, and the lights would go soft around us. In this one, he squeezes my shoulder and goes to wrangle donors with Leonard like a pair of wolves in excellent suits who memorize RSVP lists for sport. The affection between us is complicated and clean. It lives where work does, which is in the part of the world that keeps houses for things that last. Show day begins as chaos disguised as confidence. Fittings. Pins like secrets. Someone cries because her heel broke. Someone else cries because for the first time in 5 years she's wearing something that makes her feel like her body is a sentence that ends with her name. Backstage, Tiffany appears. Not like a storm. Like weather that learned manners. May I? She asks from the threshold, palms open. I nod. It feels ridiculous to pretend we haven't rehearsed versions of this moment in our heads, with scores ranging from slaps to scenes. She moves closer, the light catching on a smaller diamond than before. It looks better on her. Honest. I came to say thank you, she says. For the conditions. For not letting me bulldoze. We're building the program. We'll publish the audits this quarter. Good, I say. Publish the failures too. Her mouth quirks. My father hates you. He'll survive. Probably, she says dryly, then hesitates. Jackson's changing. Slowly. It looks like nothing until you compare it to who he was. Change always looks like nothing up close, I say. Like scenes. It holds everything together without applause. She takes this in, and for a breath we are simply two women trying to rewrite rules in languages that weren't designed to hold us. Break a leg, she says, and leaves without asking to sit in the front row. I watch her go and realize I believe her. Not about loving me, she doesn't. She doesn't have to. About doing the work. Ashley slides in under my elbow. I brought contraband. Her hands produce chocolate like a magician committed to protein. Blessings on your house, I murmur around the first square. Save me a seat for when they hand you your crown, she says. There is no crown, I say. Fine, she says. Scepter. Wrench. Whatever. The lights blink. Places. I give the cue. The first model steps into dawn. The lattice of the Aurora cuff catches and returns the light to itself, and the audience does that ripple that you can feel through your bones before you hear it with your ears. Look 1. Look 2. So many versions of strength the room forgets there was a time it thought there was only one. Then Anna's cue lands and the runway belongs to our 3 trainees. The first is a girl with a ragged hair. She steps, and the room hushes like a chapel caught holding its breath. The second's hands used to tremble. They don't. The third smiles at the end of the runway like she found a friend in the mirror and forgives her for believing lies for so long. I don't cry. I can cry later. Right now, I work. By finale, the theater's sound is no longer applause. It's relief. Relief that something you wanted for a long time turned out not to be a rumor you told yourself to get through a worse day. I walk out only because someone has to. Mark and Leonard flank me, exactly the way night and morning flank an honest day. I thank the team by name. I thank the trainees without saying the words we're surviving, because they already know and do not need my ceremony. And then I say the only sentence I planned, the one I wrote last, the one that felt like a key in my mouth. If someone paid you once to be quiet or small, you can invoice them now for every day you spent believing them. Send it to the world. Collect by living. The house rises. For a moment, the sound doesn't feel like it belongs to me. Then I realize it doesn't. It belongs to the room we made and the people we invited to stand up in it. After, in the crush of backstage, a woman with gray in her braid and steel in her spine takes my hand. I'm from your old school, she says. I run the counseling office now. We started a fund this morning. Full scholarships for girls who get their letters shredded. My heart stutters and then remembers its job. How many? As many as it takes. I think of a kitchen table, an envelope, hands that shook for all the wrong reasons. I picture a girl I'll never meet opening a letter that stays whole. We'll match whatever you raise, I say. In perpetuity. With my name. She nods, once, as if we just agreed to the weather. Between congratulations and cleanup, I find a quiet corner where the light from the exit sign makes a small green C on the floor. My phone buzzes in my pocket. A new message. Unknown, showed my daughter your speech. She asked if her homework could be jewelry now. I said yes. S. I smile at the initial like a riddle I no longer need to solve. I type 2 words, tell her yes. Ashley appears, presses her forehead to mine like we're 12, says we did a thing, and disappears again to bully someone into feeding the interns. Mark finds me afterwards, after most of the rich people have left to tell the world how generous they were with their attention. Our orders, he says, are robust. Define robust, I say. Healthy enough that I will not need to sell my vintage turntable, he replies solemnly. Tragedy averted, I murmur. He doesn't touch me. I don't touch him. We have time, or we don't. Either way, we have respect, which is what you get when you stop asking love to do the jobs work can do. Months pass like a long exhale you forgot you were holding. The workshop graduates its first cohort. 2 take jobs in our studio. 1 starts her own tiny business soldering hinges for a local bookbinder who believes in her hands. The girl with ragged hair shaves it entirely and looks like the most dangerous person you'll ever want to hire. Sterling posts their audits. They're imperfect. On page 9, a factory fails a surprise inspection and their line about corrective action reads like it was written by a person and not a ghost. They publish it anyway. I email Mrs. Sterling 1 line, good. She replies with a picture of their new overtime clock-in system and a thumbs-up emoji like a teenager. Tiffany launches a different collaboration, with a mid-sized designer who will benefit from her scale without needing her approval. It sells well. She sends me a picture of the first paycheck stub with a workshop stipend line circled. We become the kind of colleagues who do not lunch but can share a table at a conference without pretending to be enemies or friends. It is a truce written in adulthood. Jackson vanishes from my periphery in the way people do when they move to the part of your mind reserved for lessons and not for headlines. Occasionally, a business article floats by with his name in it, attached to a comment about process improvements that, for once, refer to something measurable. I do not click. I don't need to. At the end of the year, I go back to Paris for 2 weeks. The winter light there is a different language, vowels that make you kinder without asking you to lie. On my last night, I sit on a bench outside a museum that used to be a train station and watch people pretend the cold isn't as cold as it is. I write a letter to the girl I was. I do not send it anywhere. I fold it into my pocket like a prayer you say once and that is enough. On the plane, I sleep. I dream I am in a classroom that smells like metal and courage and a girl is asking me how to price her work without apologizing for her name. I tell her. She believes me. The room fills with light as if someone remembered where the switch is. When I land, Ashley is waiting with a cardboard sign that says welcome home, bestie, also your hair looks expensive. May pretends not to smile and succeeds for exactly 1 second. Leonard texts me a picture of our order book so full it looks like an overstuffed suitcase. Mark sends no text and then appears, as if summoned by restraint, with a thermos of tea that is exactly the temperature that says somebody watched the kettle with attention. We go to the studio. We work. I hold the pusher tool his mother owned and set a stone so small you could forgive the world for not seeing it, and feel it lock into place with a sound like a yes you can hear with your hands. I keep my name. I keep my work. I keep my boundaries, which are not walls but doors with hinges I designed. And when the knock comes, because it always will, I open for what I chose, not for what I survived.